Hi, welcome to Jadekind Gaming. My name is Adam. Today I'm going to do a discussion about, or review of, the adventures of Middle-earth. This is Cubical 7's 5th edition copy of a Lord of the Rings role-playing game. They came out with the One Ring, and then 5th edition came out, and they used the Open Gaming license, and they made Lord of the Rings role-playing game rules that basically build off of the 5th edition rule set. And that's what this game is. So whether this is a flip-through and review, or discussion, or however it's going to be, I'm going to kind of go through both books. I have both the Player's Guide and the Loremaster's Guide. I'm going to kind of try and go through them kind of quick. The thing is, they're going away. Cubicle 7 did not renew their rights to publish role-playing games. At the point that I'm filming this, at least, they're still technically available, but they're going to be gone soon. So if you're interested, get them. But we'll start with the Player's Guide here. And you see it's 5e compatible. Everything a player needs to create role-playing characters for the world's greatest fantasy setting. Ha ha ha. And see here. Let's just adjust things a little bit. Okay. I do think the contents having little section descriptions in it takes extra space, but it's kind of interesting as far as figuring out what to do. And of course, first we just get basics of setting information. This is Lord of the Rings. This is Middle-earth. Then we get an overview, rules for creating characters, and rules for playing the game. Then we get into cultures. Cultures is races. Here's how they work. And I'm just going to compare two of them because first off, I do not feel that these are can go and drop in as races in your normal 5e games. Let's just compare two of them. The Bardings, awesome. They get con increases by 1 and 2 other ability scores by 1. They get proficiency in the insight skill, and they get a cultural virtue, which is basically a feat. Okay. Earrings. The Dunedain, awesome. Their wisdom and constitution increase by 1, and they may increase 2 additional scores. So that's 4 ability scores instead of 3. Okay. Nice. They have proficiency in the history skill and in the survival skill. Okay, so it's double the number of skills. And they still get a cultural virtue. So, a feat. Which, their feats aren't, less powerful. In fact, theirs have some of this is a very light magic setting, and they have near magic-like stuff on one of theirs. So you can almost say some of theirs are better. And they're getting an extra skill and an extra ability score increase. The Dunedain are just better. Which, yeah. They are. They're the Dunedain. But they're not balanced, in other words. So there's that. I forget. Dwarves of the Lonely Mountain, Elves of Mirkwood, Hobbits of the Shire, Men of Bree, Men of the Lake, Men of Minas Tirith, Riders of Rohan, and the Woodmen of Wilderland. So you get, your cultures. Then you get your classes, and here are the classes. Scholar, who's a learned expert and knows healing stuff. Slayer, basically barbaric, savage warrior. Treasure hunter, or burglar to less polite people. Wanderer, experienced traveler. Warden, helps others rise up against the enemy. And warrior, disciplined fighter, associated with civilized cultures. So those are your classes. None of them mages. Closest is Scholar. Scholar here does get Hands of a Healer that gives them a pool of dice to heal. But really that's because you kind of need to be able to heal with the way 5e rules work. But there's not, like, magic. None of these are, you know, none of them have spells. They're not... I mean, this is a very light magic game. Yeah, see, no spell charts, no spell lists. That's not what this game is. Then we get virtues. Reason I say they're like a feat is because all player heroes may choose to gain a virtue instead of improving their ability scores at 4th, 8th, 12th, 16th, and 19th levels. So that's why. You get some opened virtues, like Cultural Heirloom. We'll get to that. And some other just normal things. And then each culture has a list of their own. So, yeah, they're basically, they're your feats. Did I pass it? And, like, for example, elves have, like, Wood Elf magic, which give you things like Elf Lights, and Enchanted Sleep, and Stinging Arrow. Like, that's magic. That's magic in this game. It's not a high magic game. Definitely not. Then we get into backgrounds, which is a little less feature-heavy than backgrounds in normal rules. It's just 2 skill proficiencies and a feature. And, you know, whether you have a background of a loyal servant or your background is you're doomed to die. Yeah. And then, you know, there's the Magician, which is basically has the, you know, features like you can get away with stuff because people are like, you're probably not magic, but you're probably just doing tricks, but in case you are magic. And then, you know, if you have is optional feature, Folk Healer, where you can, basically the idea is you get a different skill. You get medicine instead of sleight of hand. So, lots of background options, and most of it is basically this stuff that's filling in your, you know, distinctive qualities, hopes, specialties, and despairs. And then we get to equipment. I'm sure it's lore-based, but 1 gold piece is 20 silver pennies. 1 silver penny is 12 copper coins. That does not make for easy math. And then, you know, whatever, you got your stuff, and I have a dagger here. Let's see if I can. Dagger here is 2 silver. A club is 24 copper. If 12 copper is 1 silver, then 24 copper is 2 silver. Why is a club 24 copper and a dagger 2 silver? Standardize this, please. Why are they listed differently? Whatever. And they do that throughout. Just randomly, some things are 120 copper. Other things are labeled in silver. Whatever. And then we get to, I mentioned that virtue, or feat, cultural heirlooms. The idea is they're awarded as a gift to an honored ally when you take the feat. If lost, they can be replaced at Sanctuaries, which you have to look in this book to find out what that means, and it comes up a few different places. But it's the idea of, like, a barding may get a Dalish longbow. The Boyas of Dale used... Man. I mean, it's Lord of the Rings that they want to use language. Prodigiously tall and powerful staves staffs and fine yew wood to make bows for the king's men. Blah. Flavor. You gain a +1 bonus to attack and damage rolls made with this weapon. On a critical hit, your arrows inflict an additional 1d8 damage. So it's basically, these are your magic items. Like your heirlooms, like you get a feat in order to get like magic items. There are some other, basic magic items in here, but this is kind of, your culture's magic. Then we're on to more game rules now. Journeys. The idea in the game is that there's the, whatever they call it, the adventuring phase. And that's like when you're doing like normal D&D stuff. But they kind of came up with the concept that is only once you get to your destination. You have a journey phase to get there, and you have a fellowship phase in between your adventures. But that you don't play those out the same way as the adventure. So the idea with the journey, and they break it down right here. You assign tasks and plan a route. So you would plan a route on the map. And there's like hexes, you can figure that out. Loremaster determines the peril rating of the journey. Based on the colors you're going through, it's different difficulty. You'd assign tasks. One of those tasks is guide, scout, hunter, lookout. The guide makes an embarkation roll. So a d12 modified by their survival proficiency bonus, plus half their wisdom bonus minus the peril rating. Yeah. The Loremaster either relays the result or optionally hints at it. You determine the number of journey events. You have to look later if you want to figure out how you do that. Events are created by rolling a d12, potentially modified by the embarkation result. Events are played through, noting down the result for reference. And then the arrival roll, a d8, is made, and results are applied. How is this not incredibly fun? Like, how did they miss out on this in the base game? So the idea is, you have different modifiers based on the terrain that you're going through. Your embarkation table is, do you have a fell and foreboding start? The wearisome toil of many leagues? Or are your paths both swift and true? Or are you hidden from shadow? And it's a d12, so if you play this game for long, you're going to get repeat results. Which is okay there. Not so great in your events. So those will give you different modifiers for other things. Then depending on the length of a journey, you have here's where you know how to roll for how many events happen. And then you roll your d12, and there are 12 results. Some of them result in actually a combat. Others are just things like, do you help someone that you see needing help? No. Make a check or get point of shadow. Yes. Make a bunch of checks to try and be successful, and you might get some bonuses or penalties depending on how you do. But there's only 12 of these, so you're going to get repeats if you play very much. And they're just still things that are kind of read off. Then you get your arrival phase. And arriving could, be things like you arrive, at the end of your journey, you had ran out of food and you all arrive with a level of exhaustion, or, whatever. Grimly determined. As a result, the guide will receive a +1 bonus to the next embarkation roll. You ended with a benefit. But yeah, so your journey affects something going forward. And then they have the rules for actually how to apply the different colors to how long things take and such. Then there's shadow rules, which is the idea of you can become corrupt and get points, get madnesses kind of thing. Become forgetful, idle, cowardly. The shadow, the darkness can affect you, which is interesting, but definitely a flavor of Middle-earth thing. Then there are rules for audiences, which are, here are the different cultures and how they feel about each other as a starting point. And here are roles for affecting an audience with a king or someone in power. Which is definitely something in Lord of the Rings, where you're having audiences with those higher-ups. But also could be very much a role-play thing. I mean, if you watch any of my campaigns, you will know some of my players. Players like Austin would do great role-playing that. So much fun. Players like Nick, admittedly, rules like this would help, but it just assumes, here's rules if you want to, entreat with an upper power. And then the fellowship phase is basically downtime, except you can do things like gain a new trait, training, whatever. Receiving a title. Open a sanctuary. Like I said before, described further in the other book. And then there are some pre-generated characters at the back of this, as well as the character sheet, and contents, license, ta-da. So that is the player's guide. I mean, useful if you're going to play this game. Not the most if you're just going to be trying to pull things for your own D&D game. The races are not balanced even internally, so definitely not balanced with actual D&D stuff. I mean, if you wanted to try and reskin some stuff and make a low magic game, I guess your classes definitely are a lower magic idea, so you can kind of do that. The journey's phases... Seems like it'd be interesting the first time or two, but long term, you're gonna have so much repeat stuff. Like, it's like, okay, you got 12 options here for what events happen, and you're getting, maybe 3 or 5 per journey? You're gonna very quickly duplicate those. I'm not a huge fan of the audiences thing, although, like I said, I have some players that would benefit from that, although others wouldn't. Not a huge fan of their downtime. I know through some you can get new virtues if you do downtime. You can with your feats. You can get extra feats just in your downtime, and I'm like, I don't know. Anyways, so that's Player's Book. Loremaster's Guide, again, follows up on this, and this one advertises you can use just it, and as long as you have, the 5e rules, you can, because you can get monsters out of that, and you can get the rest of the rules from that. But I would say if you're actually going to play it, you'd want the Loremaster's Guide as well, and the Loremaster's Guide has at least a couple things that I find useful just for general, playing D&D, so here we'll carry on and take a look at that, too. And I will say first, I like the cover on this book much better. Also, while I'm thinking of it, I will also say these books, if you line up one side here, do not line up. There is a slight discrepancy in how deep they are, which is nitpicky, but I'm like, come on, guys. Make your books the same size. Lake Town, pretty map. New table of contents. Alright. Setting and Tale of Years. Blah, blah, blah. This is designed to take place in a specific period, I think, between The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings. So there's setting information and a guide to Lake Town. Alright, before the game. Basically given some basic idea of setting up the game. The adventuring phase, going over the idea of that is actually like playing D&D, and like they describe it to the extent of setting the scene. At the start of a game session, the Loremaster gives a short summary of what happened in the previous session. then describes where the characters are and what is happening around them. This should provide some immediate prompts to action, making sure that the game gets off to a quick and involving start. And then you listen to the players, who react to the scene setting, possibly deciding on a new goal for their company, or reminding themselves of their current goal. It's like, yes, this is how a role-playing game works. So yeah, they do that. Basic adventuring rules, rests, and inspiration, which they use for other things. Multiclassing is broken down real quick, but it does, have enough to allow it with the new classes. Journey is expanded, which basically gives some basic things, but really, you get this. You get raw tables. Embarkation table, journey events table, arrival table, which really just says, like on the arrival table, result of 2, 1 double of exhaustion. Result of 4, an audience or various checks to arrive at destination is successful. In arrival table 6, +1 to next embarkation roll. Like, it's just like saying, here's what actually happens, since they have all that text around it in the other. NPCs and audiences expanded. So here we actually get, stuff. None of this, I would say, is worth trying to implement into base rules. I don't think it's worth it. But if you're playing just, Adventures in Middle-earth, here are your NPCs, merchants, warriors, sages, outlaws, elves, dwarves. Like, you got those. And then audiences expanded, which kind of goes over, like, the idea of what does the other side want to get out of this? How are they feeling about, expanding on the idea of meeting with those higher-ups. First off, beautiful art. I love the art. Adversaries in battle. Here is where we get things that you can use in your normal D&D games. You get scenery in combat. You get things like the wild, the woodland, and things like mud. Thick mud underfoot can cause problems to combatants. Creatures fighting in thick mud suffer -1 to attack rolls. Nettlebark or briar patches. Nettles and briars can be crossed but count as difficult terrain. Low boughs. Ranged attacks through low boughs are made at disadvantage, even at close range. Long-range attacks cannot be made through low boughs. Areas with low boughs can be crossed but count as difficult terrain. There we get Mirkwood, ruins, caves, low ceilings. I've been running an Underdark game for so long, and at this point I'm like, I don't even know if I'm going to implement it, because it seems like the kind of thing to start introducing early on. Clearly that cavern system I have is very nice to anyone who's, tall. But the idea, low ceilings in caves. All creatures of medium size or larger must crouch, suffering disadvantage on all ability checks and attack rolls. Narrowing walls. Two-handed weapons impose disadvantage. And then atmosphere. The roar of water. Any creature in the affected area is considered to have the deafened condition. Weather. Gale or strong winds. Ranged attacks are made at disadvantage. And there's all sorts of things, just to set the environment and make it where it affects combat. Awesome. Then we get our bestiary. Real quick. The idea is there are a lot different types. There are a lot less types of monster. There's orcs. Like Mordor orcs, which includes goblins. You get spiders of Mirkwood. You got those. There's some trolls. There's the wolves, which includes even the werewolf. And then there's vampires, which is basically great bats and secret shadows. And that's it. You get a few different options for each one, but there's just not the variety of monsters, because that's not the kind of setting it is. But then you get this section, another very useful section that I glossed over the first few times I looked through the book. Creature actions and abilities. This is not further descriptions of the actions before. It's the idea of grab one of these and throw it on one or, if you have a group of monsters, give them a couple of them abilities. Like, you can make one big. This creature is a large specimen of its kind. Add +1 hit dice, +2 to strength, and thus a +1 to melee damage. Clumsy. Visibly less capable and confident than its fellows. On facing an attack roll, this creature must make... on failing an attack roll, this creature must make a dexterity save DC 12 or fall over, becoming prone. There's all sorts of them here. You can get new reactions. A biter. When wounded, this creature can, as a reaction, make a single bite melee attack. +1 to hit, 5-foot range, 2d4 slashing damage. There's bonus actions you can give them. Troop abilities. Last one standing. When this unit becomes the last survivor of the troop, this creature gains one of the following ability actions: Coward, Muling, Multi-Attack, Screaming, or Vile. So it's going to react differently once it's the last one left. Especially strong abilities and actions. This is actually going to make, affect its CR, by a level or something. Denzian of the Dark. This creature is particularly adept at using the environment and shadows to its benefit. It may take the hide action, even in plain sight. It makes stealth check, and any foes must make an opposed perception check to track its movements. Or Hard-Eyed. This creature has won many battles and knows how to kill. Increase the threat range of all its attacks by 2, meaning scores a critical hit on an 18, 19, or 20 on an attack roll. Things to really affect it. And, certainly a few more of those. And then there are actual ones that are more specific to the creatures earlier. New abilities for orcs and goblins, for trolls and ogres, for spiders, for wargs and wolves. So, those I'm less interested in. But just the idea of being able to make a difference in a swarm of creatures and have a few of them feel different, brilliant, and here's a great list to do it with. Wondrous, legendary, and healing items. So here's whatever treasure, and there are artifacts, and there are some basic rules for that. But a lot of it comes down to things like it's close fitting, so the AC of this armor is increased by 2, or it's a fell item, +2 to all attack rolls with this weapon, or whatever. Mithril armor, quality adds +2 bonus to the armor's AC, and if you have resistance to piercing and slashing damage. Whatever, it's stuff, but here's those sort of, that minor magic item kind of thing that you get. And then a little bit on magical healing. Magic and middle earth. Because, like I said, this is a very low magic setting. You're not playing one of the actual wizards. And it points out, that's the default. And here are some other options. You can play limited magic. If you want to allow some of the magic classes from base D&D, you can. And just say, here are the spells that kind of fit. Just this. These spells are sort of Middle-earth appropriate. And then you can even go reskinning it, which is the idea where you do that, but they actually have to, have a flavor idea. They can't just cast web, but they can make webs in the area thicker, and, and they can't, use, Windwalk, but perhaps they could be carried by an eagle, and so they have to flavor it, kind of thing. Or just open and say, whatever, we're just adding magic. That works too. Expansion on the Fellowship phase. There's just some basic rules, and then here's those rules for Sanctuaries, which is sort of things like, this is where your adventure begins. It allows... It's basically your home base, and it's what allows you to do the getting a new virtue or feat during your downtime. And then sort of further undertakings. basically saying, you know, carrying on with the game. Patrons, again, people of power, and then you have your errata for this book. Things like, rations seem awfully expensive. Oh, they're supposed to be half that cost. Or, there is a rule that says only for Northern Dunedain. Yeah, it's all Dunedain. So yeah, there's a page of errata, open game license, map. So yeah, those are the core Adventures in Middle-earth books. Like I said, the Loremaster's Guide, if you're just playing normal D&D, Loremaster's Guide, I feel a little more beneficial. If you're actually playing in the setting, which for me, the only reason I can imagine ever really playing in this setting is if I have someone that I know that is really into Lord of the Rings, and I want to get them into D&D. Otherwise, I don't play like pre-made settings a lot. It's definitely a unique feel because it is lower magic, so it's got that, it's something different at least. Like things like tying on to inspiration, it's like that. For me at least, that's a rule that I just ignore. That was one of the rules in 5th edition that I feel like I'm not the only one that just kind of ignores it. So, they just didn't necessarily know what would be popular, and so they just took rules as is, like, one of their classes gets the thing as their capstone ability, where it's like, if you don't have any uses of their special thing left at the beginning of a combat, you get 1 use. And I'm like, that's a terrible capstone. Yeah, they gave it to, like, bards and stuff as if it's good, but it was bad. It made it where that class was one you never took the 20th level of, because there's no real reason to, because it's got a bad ending ability. But they just assumed, well, they must have balanced and made sure this worked, so it must be good. So there's definitely some things like that, because this came out, like, early, right when the open game license came out, they started put this together and threw it out. But compared to this, to the One Ring, at least the base rules of how the game works on this, I already know. I don't have to learn a new system, and I do appreciate that. Again, like I said, Cubical 7 lost their license. These will be going out of print, or possibly by the time I get the video edited and put up, may have just gone out of print. If you want them, get them. Of course, you'll still always, there's always a secondhand market. That's so many of the books that I've gotten, I've ended up having to get on the secondhand market. Nothing wrong with that. But, yeah, definitely. And there's all sorts of supplemental books I looked at, and most of them are things that add, like, new cultures and new lore, and then some pre-made adventures. None of it seemed like the stuff that I really wanted, like, as for other games. So I was like, I got the core books. As far as I want to collect standpoint, that'll be sufficient at this point. Yeah. Now, if anyone has actually played, Adventures in Middle-earth, and, like, or if that's how you got into D&D, I'd be really interested to hear that. But, like, if you've played that, let me know what you felt of it in play, because, like, things like these cultures aren't balanced to each other kind of stands out to me. But definitely some interesting things and some cool things to pull out of the Loremaster's Guide, even if you're just playing D&D. And I'll link down below where you can find them. If I still have somewhere to find them, at least. Or at least to the page on Noble Knight, where you can always get out-of-print games anyways. So you can check that out. Like, comment, subscribe. All that YouTube stuff. Thanks for watching. Bye.